Commander Taman stood tall in the control room of his giant spaceship. His uniform was perfectly clean, and his medals shone bright under the lights. He was one of the best soldiers in the entire galaxy, and everyone knew it. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations, checking computers and watching screens that showed them everything happening in space around them. Today they were looking at planet Earth, and Commander Taman was not impressed. The blue and green world looked so small and weak compared to the mighty war planets he had seen before. His second-in-command, Captain So-Young, walked up to him holding a data pad with information about Earth criminals. So-Young was a smart woman who had fought in many battles across the galaxy. She had short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She pressed some buttons and pictures of human criminals appeared on the big screen in front of them. The first picture showed a man who robbed banks on Earth. He looked ordinary and weak with no special weapons or armor. The crew started laughing when they saw him. Then more pictures appeared showing drug dealers and thieves and car thieves. Each one looked more pathetic than the last. Taman shook his head and smiled. These humans think these are dangerous criminals, he thought to himself. The weakest child from his home planet could defeat any of these so-called bad guys without breaking a sweat. His crew agreed, and their laughter got louder. Lieutenant Hansol, who was standing nearby, pointed at one picture of a bank robber. This one stole some paper money from a building, and the humans have been trying to catch him for 2 years. Can you believe it? 2 whole years to catch one man with no special powers. The crew laughed even harder. On their homeworlds, criminals were warriors who could destroy buildings with their bare hands or had technology that could make them invisible for real. These Earth criminals looked like children playing dress-up. Captain So-Young brought up more files showing murderers and gang leaders. "Look at this one," she said, pointing to a man with tattoos. "He leads a group of 50 criminals, and they think he is very dangerous. Our training robots are more threatening than this." Commander Taman had seen real criminals before. He had fought against the Iron Claw Syndicate, whose members could lift vehicles over their heads. He had battled the Shadow Warriors, who could actually turn invisible and walk through walls. He had defeated the Blood Moon pirates, who flew ships that could destroy entire cities. Compared to those enemies, these Earth criminals were like insects. They used simple weapons that shot small pieces of metal. They had no energy shields or power armor. They could not fly or run faster than sound. They were just ordinary humans who had made bad choices. The crew spent the next hour looking through thousands of criminal files from Earth. Each one seemed more amusing than the last. There was a man who stole cars, a woman who sold illegal plants, a group that made fake money. None of them seemed capable of real danger. But then something strange happened. Deep in the computer system, buried under layers of security, Captain So-Young found a file that was different from all the others. The file was locked with symbols and warnings in many different alien languages. At the top it said, "Restricted access. Galactic Council authorization required." The picture showed a man who looked completely normal. He had dark hair and dark eyes and appeared to be in his 30s. He was not big or scary looking. He did not have tattoos or scars or any signs of being dangerous, but his file was marked with more security warnings than Commander Taman had ever seen. The name on the file was Park Ji-woo, and underneath it said, "Designation Baba Yaga." "What is this?" Commander Taman asked, trying to open the file, but the computer would not let him access it. The screen flashed red and showed warnings in the Galactic Common Language. "Unauthorized access attempt security breach detected." Captain So-Young tried using her security codes, but they did not work either. The file stayed locked no matter what they did. This was very strange because their security clearance was high enough to read files about the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy. Why would one human criminal need such high security, the commander wondered. The Galactic Council only restricted files that contained information about threats to entire star systems. What could possibly make one ordinary-looking human so important? The laughter on the bridge stopped as everyone stared at the locked file. In all their years of studying different planets and their criminal problems, they had never seen anything like this. Even files about war criminals and planet destroyers were not locked this tight. Lieutenant Hansol walked over to look at the screen. "Maybe it is a mistake," he suggested. "Perhaps their computer system has an error and locked the wrong file." But Captain So Young shook her head. Galactic Council security does not make mistakes like that. Commander Tae-min felt a strange feeling in his stomach. For the first time since arriving at Earth, he was not sure about something. All day they had been laughing at how weak and pathetic Earth criminals seemed to be, but now they had found one whose file was more protected than information about galactic superweapons. He tried one more time to access the file using his emergency command codes. These codes could open almost any file in the galactic database, but even they were not enough. The computer showed him the same red warning screen and locked him out completely. What kind of criminal needs this level of security, he asked Captain So Young. She had no answer. None of them did. The crew stood in silence looking at the picture of Park Ji-woo. He looked so normal, so ordinary. Like any human they might pass on the street, but something about him had made the most powerful government in the galaxy decide that information about him was too dangerous for anyone to see. Commander Tae-min made a decision. Tomorrow he would contact his superiors and ask about this mysterious file. Tonight he would read everything he could find about Earth and its history of crime. Maybe somewhere in all that information he would find a clue about why one human called Baba Yaga was considered so important. But deep down, he already knew that their mission to Earth was going to be very different from what they had expected. The laughter was gone now. In its place was something else, something that felt almost like fear. 3 days later, Commander Tae-min was sleeping in his quarters when an urgent message arrived. The communication system in his room started beeping loudly and woke him up. He looked at the clock and saw it was very early in the morning. Only, the most important messages came at this time. He pressed the button to accept the call, and the face of Admiral Dong-hyun appeared on his screen. The Admiral was the highest-ranking Korean officer in the entire Galactic Defense Force. He was an old man with gray hair and many scars from battles he had fought long ago. His expression was very serious, and this made Commander Tae-min feel worried. "Commander Tae-min, you have new orders," the Admiral said without any greeting or small talk. "You are being assigned to go down to planet Earth immediately. Your mission is to find and capture the criminal known as Baba Yaga. Use whatever force you think is necessary to complete this task." Commander Tae-min sat up straight in his bed. He had been hoping to learn more about the mysterious file, but he had not expected to be sent after this person so quickly. "Sir," he said carefully, "may I ask why this particular criminal is so important?" Admiral Dong-hyun was quiet for several seconds before answering. "The human you are hunting is not like other criminals, Commander. His real name is Park Ji-woo, and he was once a soldier like us. Something happened to him that changed him into something else. Something more dangerous than you can imagine. The Admiral sent him a data packet with what little information they had about Park Ji-woo. Commander Tae-min read it quickly while they talked. The file said that Park Ji-woo had been a Special Forces soldier on Earth. He had a wife named Min-hee and a daughter named Yoo-jin. Both of them had died in some kind of incident. After that, Park Ji-woo disappeared and became known as Baba Yaga. But, Sir, Commander Tae-min said after reading the file, he is just one human. We have weapons that can destroy entire buildings. We have armor that can stop explosions. What threat could one person possibly be to us? Admiral Dong-hyun looked tired and older than his years. "Commander, there are things in this universe that cannot be measured by how powerful your weapons are. There are enemies that cannot be defeated just because you have better technology. This human has earned fear from alien species that have never known what it means to be afraid." The Admiral explained that their ship, the battlecruiser Destiny, would have everything they needed. The ship was huge and could carry 200 soldiers. It had energy cannons that could level entire city blocks. It had shields that could protect them from nuclear weapons. The soldiers were all veterans who had fought in many wars across the galaxy. Captain So Young joined the conversation from the bridge. She had been listening to their talk and had questions of her own. "Admiral," she said respectfully, "we have studied Earth criminals for weeks now. They seem very primitive compared to what we usually fight. Why is this one different?" The Admiral looked at both of them for a long time before answering. "Because, Captain, this one has done things that should have been impossible. He has accomplished tasks that entire armies could not manage. When you meet him, you will understand why the Galactic Council keeps his file locked away from everyone. Commander Taemin felt that strange feeling in his stomach again. The same feeling he had gotten when he first saw the locked file. Something about this mission was not normal. But he was a soldier, and soldiers follow orders even when they do not understand them completely. "How long do we have to complete this mission?" he asked. The admiral shook his head. "Take as much time as you need, but remember that every day he remains free is another day he could disappear completely. Park Ji-woo is very good at hiding, and if he decides to vanish, you may never find him again." After the call ended, Commander Taemin called his crew together for a mission briefing. They gathered in the main conference room and he told them about their new assignment. Most of the crew seemed excited about going to Earth. They thought it would be an easy mission against primitive humans. Lieutenant Hansol raised his hand to ask a question. "Sir, if this criminal is so dangerous, why are we only sending one ship? Should we not have backup from other vessels?" Commander Taemin had been wondering the same thing, but he did not want to admit it to his crew. "The Admiral believes we are sufficient for this task," he told them. "We have more firepower than most Earth armies. One human should not be able to cause us any serious problems." But even as he said the words, he was not sure he believed them. Captain So-young began preparing the crew for departure. She assigned teams to check all their weapons and equipment. She made sure their armor was in perfect condition. She ran combat drills to keep everyone sharp. Everything seemed normal for a military operation, but some of the crew noticed that their officers seemed more nervous than usual. Commander Taemin spent long hours studying Earth history and military tactics. Captain So-young kept running extra security checks on their ship systems. Lieutenant Hansol practiced with his weapons more than normal. The ship Destiny was impressive to see. It was over 1 kilometer long and had enough weapons to destroy a small moon. The hull was made from materials stronger than diamond. The engines could push it faster than the speed of light. Inside were barracks for the soldiers, vehicles for ground operations, and medical facilities for treating injuries. As they prepared to leave for Earth, the mood on the ship was confident but not as cheerful as before. The crew joked about their mission, but the joke seemed forced. Everyone remembered the locked file and wondered what they were really going to face on the planet below. Commander Taemin stood on the bridge watching Earth grow larger as they approached. The blue and green world looked so peaceful from space. It was hard to believe that somewhere on that planet was someone who had earned the fear of the entire galaxy. But Admiral Dong-hyun had been clear about one thing. Park Ji-woo was not just another criminal. He was something else entirely. Something that had made the most powerful government in known space decide his information was too dangerous to share. As the ship entered Earth orbit, Commander Taemin made a final announcement to his crew. "Remember, he told them, we are hunting someone who has survived everything Earth and the galaxy could throw at him. Stay alert, stay together, and do not underestimate our target just because he is human." The hunt for Baba Yaga was about to begin. The city of Seoul spread out below them like a giant maze of buildings and roads. Commander Taemin looked down from his transport ship as they flew over the Korean capital searching for any sign of their target. The intelligence report said Park Ji-woo had been seen in this area just 3 days ago, but now there was no trace of him. Captain So-young pointed to a section of the city where old warehouses and factories sat empty and abandoned. "Our sensors detected some unusual energy. Readings from that district," she reported. "It might be nothing, but it is the only lead we have right now." Commander Taemin nodded and ordered the ship to land near the warehouse area. The buildings looked old and dirty with broken windows and rusted metal walls. Most of them appeared to be empty and had been that way for many years. It seemed like the perfect place for a criminal to hide from the authorities. Lieutenant Hansol led the first team of 12 soldiers toward the largest warehouse building. Each soldier wore advanced armor that could stop bullets and energy weapons. Their helmets had built-in computers that could see in the dark and detect movement from far away. They carried plasma rifles that could cut through steel like paper. As they walked through the empty streets, their confidence was high. These soldiers had fought against alien warriors who could breathe fire and criminals who could turn their skin into metal. One human hiding in an old building did not seem like much of a threat to them. The warehouse district was completely quiet. No people walked the streets and no vehicles drove on the roads. Even the birds seemed to have left this area long ago. The only sounds were their boots hitting the ground and the quiet hum of their electronic equipment. Lieutenant Hansol spoke into his radio as his team approached the main warehouse. "Control, this is Alpha Team. We are at the target building now. No signs of life detected anywhere in the area. Beginning our search of the interior now." The warehouse was huge inside, with high ceilings and rows of old machinery that had not been used in years. Dust covered everything and their footsteps echoed in the empty space. The soldiers spread out in formation, checking every corner and hiding spot they could find. Their sensors showed nothing unusual. No heat signatures from living beings. No energy readings from weapons or equipment. No movement anywhere in the building. It looked like they had come to the wrong place, or their target had already moved on to somewhere else. But then strange things started happening. Motion detectors that should only react to large moving objects began triggering randomly. The soldiers would rush to investigate, but find nothing there. Their communication equipment started making weird noises and sometimes cut out completely for a few seconds. Must be interference from all this old machinery. Lieutenant Hansol muttered as he tried to fix his radio. These buildings probably have electrical problems that are affecting our gear. But deep down he was starting to feel uncomfortable about the whole situation. The team continued searching room by room through the warehouse. They found old offices, with dusty desks and broken computers. They found storage areas filled with empty boxes and rusty shelves. They found maintenance rooms with tools that had not been touched in years. Everything seemed normal and boring until they reached the back section of the building. Here the lights were completely broken and darkness filled the corridors. The soldiers turned on their helmet lights and continued forward, but the beams only showed them empty walls and doors. That was when they heard it. A sound so quiet, they almost missed it completely. Footsteps. Slow and careful, like someone trying not to be detected. But when they stopped moving and listened closely, the footsteps stopped too. "Show yourself," Lieutenant Hansol called out into the darkness. "We are soldiers of the Galactic Defense Force. If you surrender now, you will not be harmed. We only want to talk to you." The footsteps started again, but now they seemed to be coming from all directions at once. The soldiers formed a defensive circle with their weapons ready, but they could not see anything to shoot at. Their sensors still showed no life signs anywhere near them. Then a voice spoke from the darkness. It was calm and quiet, but somehow seemed to fill the entire space around them. "You came looking for the Baba Yaga," the voice said in perfect Korean. "But you do not understand what that name really means." Lieutenant Hansol spun around trying to locate where the voice was coming from, but it seemed to echo off the walls, making it impossible to pinpoint. "Fight like a warrior," he shouted. "Stop hiding in the shadows and face us properly." But Park Ji-woo was not interested in fighting like a warrior. He had learned long ago that honor and fairness were luxuries that got good people killed. He moved through the darkness like smoke, using skills he had developed over years of hunting the worst criminals on Earth. The first soldier disappeared without making any sound at all. One moment he was standing with his team, and the next moment he was simply gone. His life signs vanished from their helmet displays as if he had never existed. The remaining soldiers looked around frantically but saw nothing. Then another soldier vanished, and another. Each time there was no sound of fighting or struggling. No flash of weapons being fired. No sign of what was happening to their teammates. They just stopped being there. Lieutenant Hansol ordered his remaining men to form a tighter circle and keep their weapons pointing outward. But it did not help. One by one his soldiers continued to disappear into the darkness until only he was left standing alone in the middle of the warehouse. "Where are they?" he screamed into the empty air. "What have you done with my men?" But the only answer was silence that seemed to press down on him like a heavy weight. Back on the ship, Commander Taimin watched the life signs of Alpha Team disappear from his screens one after another. He tried to contact Lieutenant Hansol on the radio, but got only static and strange noises. Captain So-young prepared a rescue team to go into the warehouse immediately. When the backup soldiers arrived, they found Lieutenant Hansol sitting on the floor in the center of the building. His rifle was broken into pieces beside him, and his armor had been removed somehow without damaging it. He was staring straight ahead and did not respond when they called his name. The missing soldiers were nowhere to be found. Their armor and weapons were discovered scattered around the city, but the men themselves had vanished completely. There were no bodies, no blood, no signs of violence, just empty armor and broken equipment. When Commander Taemin asked Lieutenant Hansol what had happened to his team, the young officer could only whisper the same words over and over. He was never there. I never saw him. But they are all gone. The medical team examined Hansol and found no physical injuries. His body was perfectly healthy, but his mind seemed to have been damaged by whatever he had experienced in that warehouse. He kept talking about shadows that moved by themselves and footsteps that came from impossible directions. Commander Taemin stood in the empty warehouse later that night, trying to understand what had happened to his soldiers. The building looked completely normal with no signs that a battle had taken place. But 11 of his best warriors had entered this place and only one had come out alive. For the first time since arriving at Earth, he began to understand that they were not hunting an ordinary criminal. They were facing something that could make experienced soldiers disappear without a trace and leave no evidence behind. Something that could break a man's mind without touching his body. Park Ji-woo had sent them a message without saying a word. He could take their soldiers anytime he wanted. He could infiltrate their secure areas and strike without warning. The hunt was not going the way they had expected. Now the hunters had become the hunted and they did not even know how it had happened. Back on their ship in orbit above Earth, Commander Taemin sat in his private office trying to make sense of what had happened. 11 of his best soldiers had vanished without a trace. The security cameras in the warehouse had mysteriously malfunctioned during the exact time his team was inside. Even their advanced alien technology had failed to record anything useful. Captain So Young knocked on his door and entered carrying a medical report about Lieutenant Hansol. The doctors have examined him thoroughly, she reported. His body shows no signs of injury or drug use, but his psychological state is completely shattered. He keeps talking about impossible things. Commander Taemin took the report and read through it carefully. The medical team had found that Hansol was physically perfect, but mentally traumatized by something they could not understand. He claimed that his soldiers had been taken by shadows that moved like living things. He insisted that he had heard voices coming from empty air. What else have we learned about our target? Commander Taemin asked. Captain So Young activated her datapad and began reading from the research her team had gathered. The information they had found painted a picture that was both fascinating and terrifying. Park Ji-woo had been born in Seoul 35 years ago. As a young man, he had joined the Korean military and quickly proven himself to be exceptionally skilled. He became a member of the Special Forces and earned many medals for bravery and leadership. His record showed him to be the perfect soldier. Then, he had married a woman named Min Hee, and they had a daughter named Yoo-jin. For several years, Park Ji-woo lived a normal life as a husband and father, while serving his country with honor. The family was happy and peaceful according to all accounts, but everything changed when terrorists attacked a shopping center in Seoul. The attack was meant to target a corrupt government official, but the terrorists made a mistake. Instead, they killed innocent people, including Park Ji-woo's wife and daughter who had been shopping for Yoo-jin's birthday present. Captain So Young paused in her reading as she reached the next part of the story. After the funeral, Park Ji-woo requested leave from the military. When his leave ended, he did not return to his unit. Instead, he seemed to disappear completely from normal society. What happened next was like something from a nightmare. The terrorist organization that had killed his family began dying in ways that defied explanation. Their leaders would be found dead in locked rooms with no signs of how anyone had entered. Their safe houses would be discovered empty with all the occupants simply gone. Within 6 months, the entire terrorist network had been destroyed. Not arrested or scattered, but completely eliminated. Every member, every supporter, every person who had helped them in any way had either died or vanished. The organization simply stopped existing as if it had never been real. But Park Ji-woo did not stop there. Captain So Young continued. He began targeting other criminal groups that operated. In Korea, drug dealers would disappear from their heavily guarded compounds. Crime bosses would be found dead despite having dozens of bodyguards. Corrupt officials would resign from their positions and flee the country in terror. The pattern was always the same. Park Ji-woo would identify a target, and then that person would either die or disappear. No one ever saw him coming, no one ever caught him in the act. He moved like a ghost through the criminal underworld, leaving behind only fear and empty graves. Commander Tae-min felt a chill run down his spine as he listened to the report. This was not the profile of an ordinary criminal, or even an ordinary soldier. This was something else entirely, something that had learned to hunt human predators using their own methods against them. The criminal organizations began calling him Baba Yaga, Captain So-young explained. It comes from old Earth folklore, about a witch who lived in the forest and punished the wicked. But to the criminals it meant something more specific. It meant the thing that comes for you when you think you are safe. Over the following years, Park Ji-woo expanded his activities beyond Korea. He began hunting international crime syndicates that operated across multiple countries. Human traffickers would find their operations shut down overnight with their leaders missing. Arms dealers would have their weapons stolen, and their contacts eliminated. The most disturbing part of his legend was how thorough he was. When Park Ji-woo decided to destroy a criminal organization, he did not just kill a few leaders and hope the rest would scatter. He systematically eliminated every single person involved, no matter how small their role had been. There were stories of crime families that had operated for generations being wiped out in a single month. Drug cartels with thousands of members would simply cease to exist. Corrupt government networks that had seemed untouchable would collapse as their members fled in terror or turned up dead. But here is the strangest part, Captain So-young said, as she reached the end of her report. Despite all the death and destruction, Park Ji-woo caused the overall crime rate in every area he operated actually went down. Other criminals became too afraid to take the place of the ones he had eliminated. Commander Tae-min stood up and walked to his window, looking down at the planet below. Somewhere on that world was a man who had become something beyond human understanding. A person who had transformed grief into a weapon more effective than any army. That night, as the crew tried to sleep in their secure ship, something impossible happened again. Park Ji-woo somehow entered their vessel without triggering any of their security systems. Alarms that could detect the smallest foreign object remained silent. Sensors that could identify DNA signatures found nothing unusual. He moved through their ship like smoke, leaving small gifts for the crew to discover when they woke up. Personal items from their home worlds that should have been impossible for him to obtain. Family photographs that had been stored in their private quarters. Messages written in their native languages placed on their pillows while they slept. The messages were all different, but they carried the same meaning. I know who you are. I know where you come from. I know about the people you care about. If I wanted to harm you or them, you would already be dead. Some soldiers found childhood toys from their planets placed beside their beds. Others discovered food from their home worlds that could not possibly exist on Earth. A few found letters written in the handwriting of family members they had not seen in years. No one saw him enter the ship. No one detected him moving through the corridors. No one witnessed him leaving. But every single person on that vessel understood the message he had left behind. They were completely vulnerable to him, and he was showing them mercy by not taking advantage of that fact. Commander Tae-min found a picture of his own family on his desk the next morning. It showed his parents and siblings back on his home world, going about their normal daily activities. The picture had been taken recently, based on the clothes they were wearing and the season visible in the background. Attached to the photo was a note written in perfect Korean. Your family is safe and happy. They do not need to suffer because you are following orders. Leave Earth now and they will remain that way. Continue hunting me, and I cannot guarantee their protection. Captain So-young gathered the crew for an emergency meeting that morning. Everyone had received similar gifts and messages during the night. The reality of their situation was becoming clear to all of them. They were not hunting a criminal who was hiding from them. They were being hunted by something that could reach them anywhere at any time. The legend of Baba Yaga was not just a story told by frightened criminals. It was a warning about what happened when someone pushed beyond the normal limits of human capability. Park Ji-woo had become something that transcended ordinary understanding of what one person could accomplish. and now that legend had turned its attention to them. Commander Taman could not sleep after finding the photograph of his family on his desk. The image kept appearing in his mind every time he closed his eyes. How had Park Ji-woo obtained such a recent picture from a planet thousands of light years away? How had he managed to enter their heavily secured ship without detection? Unable to rest, he decided to contact Admiral Dong Hyun directly using his emergency communication codes. These codes were reserved for the most critical situations when a mission was in serious danger. As the Admiral face appeared on his screen, Commander Taman could see that the older man looked tired and worried. "Sir, we need to know what we are really dealing with here," Commander Taman said without any greeting. "This human Park Ji-woo is not just another criminal. He has abilities that seem impossible. What exactly are we hunting?" Admiral Dong Hyun was quiet for a long time before responding. His expression showed the weight of knowledge that he had been carrying for many years. "Commander, what I am about to tell you is classified at the highest levels of galactic security. This information has never been shared outside the Galactic Council inner circle." The Admiral began to explain events that had taken place 50 years earlier, long before Earth had any knowledge that alien civilizations existed. At that time, the HFY galaxy was facing a crisis that threatened the stability of dozens of worlds. A massive criminal organization called the Black Star Cartel had grown so powerful that it was challenging governments and corrupting entire planetary systems. The Black Star Cartel was unlike anything we had seen before, Admiral Dong Hyun continued. They were not just criminals seeking profit. They were building an empire that could have replaced legitimate governments across multiple star systems. Their influence was spreading like a disease through the galaxy. Commander Taman listened carefully as the Admiral described how the cartel operated. They would infiltrate government agencies and buy off officials with massive bribes. They would establish criminal operations on planets and use the profits to fund rebel movements. They would sell advanced weapons to terrorist groups and create chaos that they could exploit. The cartel had bases of operation on 17 different worlds, including Earth. They had chosen Earth because humans were not yet part of galactic civilization and had no way to report their activities to authorities. The planet became a major hub for their illegal operations. But Sir Commander Taman interrupted. "What does this have to do with Park Ji-woo? One man could not possibly challenge an organization that powerful." The Admiral expression grew even more serious. "That is what we thought too, Commander. That is what everyone thought. The Galactic Council had been trying to stop the Black Star Cartel for decades without success. Their operations were too widespread, and their corruption too deep for conventional law enforcement to handle. Military action was considered, but the cartel had bases on so many worlds that a war would have caused massive civilian casualties. Then something unexpected happened on Earth. Reports began reaching the Galactic Council about criminal organizations disappearing without explanation. Drug cartels that had been operating for the cartel would simply vanish overnight. Arms dealers would be found dead in impossible circumstances. Money laundering operations would shut down as their operators fled in terror. At first we thought it was infighting among the criminal groups, Admiral Dong Hyun explained. These things happen sometimes when there is too much competition for territory and profits. But then our intelligence agents on Earth began hearing stories about someone called Baba Yaga. The story seemed impossible to believe. A single human was apparently systematically destroying criminal networks that employed thousands of people. He was doing it alone without any support or advanced technology. He was accomplishing what entire police forces and military units had failed to achieve. Captain So Young joined the conversation from the bridge where she had been monitoring their discussion. "Admiral," she said respectfully, "how could one human accomplish such things? Even our most elite soldiers would struggle against organized crime syndicates with that many members." The Admiral turned his attention to her. "Captain, that is the question we asked ourselves. Our analysts studied every piece of information they could gather about this Baba Yaga. What they discovered changed our understanding of what humans are capable of achieving. Park Ji-woo had not gained supernatural powers or alien technology. Instead, he had developed his natural human abilities to levels that seemed impossible. He had learned to move without being detected by even the most advanced security systems. He had mastered combat techniques that allowed him to defeat multiple opponents simultaneously. But most importantly, he had learned to think like his enemies and use their own methods against them. Criminals rely on fear and intimidation to control others. Park Ji-woo became more frightening than any criminal. They depend on secrecy and hidden operations. He became more invisible than any shadow. Within 18 months of when we first heard his name, Admiral Dong Hyun continued Park Ji-woo, had completely destroyed the Black Star cartel presence on Earth. Not just damaged it or reduced it, but eliminated it entirely. Every cartel member, every supporter, every person who had helped them was either dead or had fled the planet. Commander Taemin felt his understanding of the situation shifting dramatically. But Admiral, he said slowly, that still only accounts for 1 planet out of 17. How could destroying their Earth operations affect the entire cartel? The Admiral smiled grimly. That is where the story becomes truly remarkable, Commander. After cleaning Earth of cartel presence, Park Ji-woo did not stop. He somehow acquired transportation off-planet and began hunting cartel operations throughout the galaxy. We still do not know how he managed interstellar travel or how he located their hidden bases. Over the next few years, reports began reaching the Galactic Council from worlds across multiple star systems. Black Star cartel operations were being destroyed by an unknown individual who seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. The pattern was always the same as what had happened on Earth. Cartel leaders would be found dead in locked rooms. Safe houses would be discovered empty with no signs of struggle. Criminal networks that had operated for decades would simply cease to exist overnight. Fear began spreading through the organization faster than any disease. By the time we realized what was happening, Admiral Dong Hyun explained it was too late for the cartel to defend themselves effectively. Their members were abandoning their posts and fleeing to remote planets. Those who stayed loyal to the organization were systematically eliminated by someone they could neither see nor stop. The Black Star cartel, which had threatened to overthrow governments across 17 worlds, was completely destroyed by one human seeking revenge for his family. When Park Ji-woo that evening, Commander Taemin sat alone in his quarters, staring out at the lights of Seoul far below. His mind was filled with everything he had learned about Park Ji-woo and the impossible situation they had found themselves in. How do you capture someone who has proven he can reach you anywhere at any time? How do you fight an enemy who could have killed you already but chose not to? The lights in his room suddenly dimmed without any command from him. Commander Taemin did not reach for his weapon or call for security. Somehow he knew that such actions would be completely useless. Instead, he remained seated at his desk and waited to see what would happen next. Park Ji-woo stepped out of the shadows near the wall, as if he had always been there. He moved with the fluid grace of someone who had learned to control every muscle and every breath. Up close, Commander Taemin could see that he was not as young as his file photo had suggested. Lines around his eyes spoke of years spent in difficult places doing dangerous things. Commander Taemin, Park Ji-woo said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that seemed much heavier than his physical presence. You have been hunting me for several days now. Have you found what you were looking for? The question seemed both simple and incredibly complex. Commander Taemin had come to Earth expecting to find a criminal who could be captured with superior firepower and technology. Instead, he had discovered someone whose story challenged everything he thought he understood about justice and power. Why did you not kill us? Commander Taemin asked. Your reputation suggests that you do not show mercy to people who hunt you. Park Ji-woo moved to a chair across from him and sat down with careful, deliberate motions. Every movement seemed calculated to avoid appearing threatening, while still maintaining complete alertness. Because you are soldiers, not criminals, Park Ji-woo replied. You follow orders from people you trust, even when those orders do not make complete sense. You are here because someone told you I was dangerous to the galaxy, not because you decided that on your own. Commander Taemin studied the man across from him, trying to reconcile the ordinary appearance with the legendary reputation. Park Ji-woo looked tired, older than his years should have made him. But his eyes held something that made Commander Taemin breath catch in his throat. Not madness or cruelty, but an infinite sadness mixed with unbreakable determination. "Tell me about your family," Commander Taimin said. Park Ji-woo was quiet for several seconds before answering. His expression softened slightly as if he was remembering something precious that had been lost long ago. Min-hee was a teacher at an elementary school, Park Ji-woo began. She loved children and wanted to help them learn about the world. She would spend hours preparing lessons and thinking of ways to make learning fun for her students. Yujin was 7 years old and wanted to be a scientist when she grew up. She was always asking questions about how things worked. The pain in his voice was evident as he continued speaking. They died because some terrorists made a mistake. They were supposed to kill a corrupt government official who had been stealing money meant for schools and hospitals. Instead, their bomb went off while my family was shopping for Yujin's birthday present. Commander Tae-min felt a strange sensation in his chest as he listened to the story. He had read the facts in Park Ji-woo file, but hearing the personal details made the tragedy seem much more real. A good man had lost everything that mattered to him because of other people's evil actions. After the funeral, I requested leave from the military park. Ji-woo continued. I told my commanding officers that I needed time to grieve and decide what to do with the rest of my life. What I actually did was begin learning everything I could about the people who had killed my family. The investigation had taken months, as Park Ji-woo discovered that the terrorist organization was much larger and more connected than anyone had realized. They had financial backing from criminal groups that operated across multiple countries. They had corrupt officials protecting them from law enforcement. They had weapons suppliers and safe house networks that made them nearly impossible to stop through normal means. "So you decided to stop them yourself," Commander Tae-min said. Park Ji-woo nodded slowly. "The legal system had failed to protect my family, and it was failing to bring justice to their killers. Police investigations went nowhere because evidence would disappear, or witnesses would refuse to talk. Courts would not convict people when key testimony was mysteriously unavailable. What happened next had become the foundation of the Baba Yaga legend. Park Ji-woo had used his military training and his knowledge of criminal psychology to become something that his enemies could not understand or defend against. He learned to move without being seen, to strike without warning, and to disappear without leaving traces. But I discovered something important during those first missions," Park Ji-woo explained. "The terrorists who killed my family were part of something much bigger. They were connected to criminal organizations that hurt innocent people all around the world. Stopping just them would not prevent other families from suffering the same loss." Commander Tae-min began to understand how one-man grief had transformed into a mission that spanned multiple star systems. Park Ji-woo had not just sought revenge for his personal tragedy. He had decided to eliminate the entire network of evil that had made such tragedies possible. "I spent years learning their methods and their weaknesses." Park Ji-woo continued. "I studied how they recruited new members and how they moved money and weapons. I discovered their safe houses and their communication systems. I became an expert on criminal psychology and organizational structure. The transformation had not been easy or quick. Park Ji-woo had taught himself skills that most people would need decades to master. He learned multiple languages so he could operate in different countries. He studied technology so he could bypass security systems. He practiced combat techniques until he could defeat multiple opponents simultaneously. Most importantly, he had learned to think like his enemies while never becoming like them. Criminals used fear and violence to achieve their goals, but they also had weaknesses that could be exploited. They trusted too much in their ability to hide and their belief that no one would dare challenge them directly. When I finally began my work, Park Ji-woo said the results were more effective than I had hoped. Criminal organizations depend on their members believing that they are protected by secrecy and superior numbers. When someone proves that neither of those things can save them, the entire structure begins to collapse. Commander Tae-min had read reports about how quickly criminal networks had disintegrated once Park Ji-woo began targeting them, but hearing the explanation from the man himself made the process seem both more logical and more terrifying. One person with enough determination and skill could indeed destroy organizations that employed thousands of people. The conversation continued through the night as Park Ji-woo explained his methods and philosophy. He described how he had gradually expanded his operations beyond Earth when he discovered that many criminal organizations were connected to groups operating on other worlds. The Black Star Cartel had been the largest and most dangerous, but there had been others as well. You eliminated threats that entire governments could not handle, Commander Taemin said. The Galactic Council should be grateful for what you accomplished. Park Ji-woo's expression grew darker. The Galactic Council is afraid of what I represent. They understand that someone with my capabilities could just as easily target corrupt officials as criminal organizations. This was the heart of the problem that had brought Commander Taemin to Earth. Park Ji-woo had proven that individual action could accomplish what institutional authority could not. That was a dangerous precedent for any government to acknowledge. If people believed that they could take justice into their own hands when official channels failed, the result would be chaos. But it was also true that official channels had failed spectacularly when it came to stopping the Black Star Cartel. Decades of investigation and enforcement action had been completely ineffective. Only Park Ji-woo's solitary crusade had succeeded in eliminating the threat they posed to galactic civilization. As dawn began to break over Seoul, Park Ji-woo prepared to leave. Commander Taemin felt that he should try to complete his mission and attempt to capture the man who had been sitting across from him for hours, but he also knew that such an attempt would be both futile and wrong. Tell your superiors that Earth criminals are my responsibility, Park Ji-woo said as he stood up. The galaxy has nothing to fear from them as long as I am alive to deal with them, but also tell them that I will not allow Earth to be harmed by anyone including the Galactic Defense Force. He paused at the door and looked back at Commander Taemin. And Commander, the next time someone sends you to hunt a legend, remember that. Legends exist because they represent truths that people need to believe in. Sometimes the monster is necessary to keep worse monsters away. Commander Taemin watched him walk toward the window and somehow disappear into the morning light, as if he had never been there at all. But the conversation they had shared would stay with him for the rest of his life. He had come to Earth expecting to capture a dangerous criminal, and instead had met someone who embodied both the best and most frightening aspects of human nature. The Galactic Defense Force left Earth,